Hey everybody, I'm Adam.
And I'm Phoebe.
And we're from In the Great Wide, and today we're here to talk to you about Three Campground.
Three Campground is located just north of Kernville, California, in the Sequoia National Forest. It's about a 3-hour drive northeast of Los Angeles, so it's a really good option if you're looking for somewhere to camp near LA.
Now, keep in mind, the Sequoia National Forest is not the Sequoia National Park.
Yeah. So don't expect to see the beautiful, enormous trees, sequoia trees, at this campground, because it's a different part.
Yeah, if you want to see those giant trees, you gotta drive another 3 hours north or so.
But the landscape is still really beautiful. So even though you don't get the giant trees, you get a river.
You get the Kern River. It's real nice.
Yes.
The campground is located right next to the very beautiful Kern River. Kern River was designated a wild and scenic river in 1987. Now, you may not have heard of what a wild and scenic river is.
I haven't, yeah.
It was a designation created by the U.S. government in the late 60s, essentially meaning that the river cannot be dammed or otherwise impeded in any way. Oh. It has to stay in its free-flowing condition.
Oh,
now, this is really good for Kern River because it's been used for like rafting and tubing and stuff like that. Recreation companies selling guided tours up and down the Kern River, because there's parts of it that get pretty whitewatery, pretty deep, and can get really scary sometimes.
Sometimes,
in some places of the river. It is like almost 200-mile river, so I mean it's got some places to go, some dips and valleys in the river.
And this Kern River is right next to Three Campground, but around where Three Campground is, it's not very deep.
No.
There's a lot of big boulders, but it's not very deep.
Maybe 6 feet. Now, it also could be right now just because we're still going through a drought.
Yeah.
It's very possible it's lower. I know that behind our campsite, through the dense trees, you had to go through essentially another beach, which I believe for most of the time is covered in water, but it was not.
Yeah.
And
the water is really cold though. So you know, just be prepared for that. But it feels fantastic when it's like really hot. So it's a great place to go camping in the summertime because you have the river that's right there to go cool off.
I would disagree and say it's not very cold. I think it's a little chilly. But I also am hot all the time, so I like
cold all the time,
like it when things are cool. It was really nice on the weekend the days we went. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
It's the main reason why we always come back to this series of campgrounds along the Kern River. The Kern River is just amazingly gorgeous.
Yeah, but it can also be dangerous at times, like you were saying about with the rapids, and it can have some really strong currents. So just please be careful. You know, if you're going in Kern River, just be aware that it can be dangerous.
Even in the places where we were going, where it was still like
pretty shallow,
only a few feet, it was still strong. You know, I mean, not enough to obviously to knock you down or anything, but it was still strong. So you gotta be very careful. There's always, before we start going camping up in Kern River, we always start reading articles about people potentially drowning and stuff. So it happens way more often than it should. So just be really careful up there.
But it's a beautiful place.
Yeah, definitely worth going back to, for sure.
Yeah, and you can like wade through the shallow parts of the river and cool off, and it's really nice. Yeah.
Yeah, highly recommend water shoes for the river. We didn't do that the first time we went, and our friends did, and now we have water shoes because they're smart and we're smart, and it is the only way to walk through that river is with water shoes.
Yeah. Three Campground is actually run by a third-party company called Rocky Mountain Recreation Company, which means that there should be a camp host on site at the campground the entire time you're camping there.
Unfortunately, when we were there, the camp host was non-existent. I went and knocked on his trailer door a couple of times, and nothing moved in the 3 days we were there.
Yeah.
I'm assuming they only have one camp host. It's not like there's a substitute that can come in, so he may have been out, you know, whatever. But
don't know.
But part of that is like, oh, you know, there's nobody there to make sure nobody's doing any campfires, which our neighbors did, not realizing, came and asked us, and we weren't really sure. but the camp host is usually there.
Yeah.
And they're a good resource if something happens. They're there for you, and they know that, and they live in the place that we get to visit. So
yeah. Yeah. But you can still make reservations through recreation.gov, even though it is run by a third-party company.
Yeah, it's called a concessionaire. They're essentially acting in lieu of the government, so the government doesn't have to set up all of the administration side of it. Oh. Yeah, it's a weird thing. I discovered all this before we went to Camp 3. Because I was trying to figure out about the campfires, and I had no idea it was run by a different company. They're not technically federal employees. They are run by a third-party company. Yeah, private company. So
interesting. The campground does have vault toilets, and the smell was never bad. No. We had one that was not far from our campsite at all, but inside the structures, it does get very hot. So, just, again, prepare yourself for that.
Especially that late afternoon. It gets real hot.
It can get warm up there, for sure, in the afternoon. There's also water spigots throughout the campground, but our experience in that area is that at the campgrounds in that area is that the water from those spigots is not really clean, so we don't rely on it.
Yeah.
So,
you should still bring in your own drinking water. The water from the spigots can be used for cleaning. They still recommend boiling it first.
Yeah. We
didn't
use any of this last time at Camp 3. We just took all of the water that we needed. Yeah.
Definitely though, do not drink from the spigots. It is untreated.
Don't rely on it.
It's not even that it's not clean. It's just untreated. So there could be anything in it. And there's stuff in those rivers, it's just how it is.
Yeah.
And from the underground wells, it's just stuff in there. So definitely if you're going to use it, last time we went camping, we used it for coffee and you just had to boil it and then it was fine. But definitely don't just jump over and start drinking from it. It'd be gross.
It would be gross. There is also some wildlife in the area. There's a bear box at each campsite that you should definitely use, but not so much for bears as there is skunks.
So far we're batting 1,000 for having skunks visit us while at camping in the area.
Yeah.
I think they're just brave, and this one didn't really bother us. He was just kind of passing through, and there were enough of us that I think he got freaked out and took off. But
there are definitely skunks in the area, so use bear box. Anyway.
Each campsite contains a picnic table, a fire ring, and a bear box, as we said. Each has space for 2 vehicles max.
And we had 2 campsites because we had 7 people, including us. Yeah. Across 5 tents. So we had plenty of space with the 2 campsites that were side by side for everybody to spread out and have their own space. But there were some other campsites that we saw in the campground that would only have space for like 1 or maybe 2 tents.
Yeah.
So just make sure that you're looking at photos online of the campsite that you're specifically booking if you need to have space for more than 1 tent.
Between our campsite and the river was a copse of dense trees, and there was enough clearing that we were able to set up our tent, and we had 2 of the friends set up inside this clearing. Which was phenomenal because
of the shade.
Definitely kept the tents cool, which was the biggest problem we had last time, is that there just wasn't enough of coverage, and it got real hot.
It got real hot in those tents, for sure. Yeah. But it was only about like a 2-minute walk to the river. Granted, it was over uneven ground and it was through some trees and stuff, but there was a path. There was a worn path.
Yeah. And it wasn't bad. I mean, it wasn't like you're, a big decline kind of stuff. It was just the funny part was getting through the last dense foliage before getting to the beach area was the hardest because stuff had just overgrown so much. But, once you get through it once, then you're good.
You'll figure it out. Yeah. And we actually had like kind of our own little private beach area that was only really accessible from our campsite and then the campsite next to us.
Yeah. Which the first day we were there was a three guys over at the campsite next to us, and they were there at the beach and hung out. But then that next morning they left, and so all that next day it was just us.
Yeah, we had it all to ourselves.
So
we were kind of spoiled, but it was a great spot.
Yeah,
it was fantastic. Yeah,
but be aware though, at Camp 3 and other campgrounds up in that area, that not all the campsites have access to the river. So definitely make sure you look at the campground map and choose a site that's closer to the river on the western side.
Yeah. And not all campsites have shade either.
Yeah.
So just, again, it's safer to go for the campsites that are on the western side, because those generally will be more shaded, closer to the river, all that jazz.
The weather in June is very hot out there, but on our last day, a random storm popped up, forcing us to skip breakfast and just pack our cars and get out.
Yeah.
It wasn't bad, but it definitely rained.
We woke up and it was raining. Yeah. Which was kind of nice, but then it wasn't going to stop raining, so we had to back up.
The irony about it is that we're right in the middle of fire season right now in California. Pretty much between the end of May to the end of November now is fire season, where everything gets really dry and the outdoors are much more likely to catch on fire. So campfires, open fires, are not allowed unless you're above 5,000 feet, which Camp 3 and I think all of the campsites in that area are not. They're right around 3,000 feet. So even a wood-burning fire ring like we have at the campsite could potentially start a fire.
Yeah. So we weren't allowed to use the campfire ring and have a campfire while we were there this time. So just be aware that that might be an issue. So you should stick to propane stoves and stuff like that, and just be watchful of the open flames.
Yeah. The summer temperatures on average are usually highs in the 90s, low in the low 60s, so you won't necessarily need a campfire to stay warm.
Yeah. It's nice to have, but you won't die without it.
Yeah, I mean, we managed to go without it and it was fine.
Yeah.
I mean, it definitely, you lose a sense of camping, yes, but it's California, it's just how it is.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we're in the third year of a very long drought, so it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Just make sure to check the U.S. Forest Service website for updated restrictions. Although even those cannot always be up to date.
Yeah.
Like we went and we were getting mixed signals from the Rocky Mountain Recreational Company website and the official Forest Service website.
Yeah.
And Grand realized the Forest Service site said that fires were not allowed, which, is kind of the end all be all. But when we got there, we stopped at a shop and asked for firewood, and the guy asked where we were going, and we said Camp 3, and he said, no, you can't, I can't sell it to you because it's you can't have fires. And he was right. And then when we came back, I realized there was a giant sign on
at the entrance
of the entrance of the campground saying, don't use any fires. Do have open fires.
Yeah. But in order, I think, to even use like the propane stoves and stuff in that area, you should still get a California Campfire Permit, which is free. You just have to go online before you go to the campsite. Go online, and it requires you to watch like a short safety video, and then you can print out your California Campfire Permit to take with you, just in case the camp host asks for it, because they are allowed to ask you for that.
Yeah, if they show up and you do have an open fire or using the fire ring, or if you have a stove going and you don't have the fire permit, they are allowed to kick you off the property.
Yeah. And that goes for regardless of what the fire restrictions actually are, you need to have the campfire permit if you are going to use fire of any kind in that area.
Yeah. Well, we really hope that you found this helpful. We definitely recommend Camp 3 Campground. It's amazing.
Yeah.
All those headquarters, there's a halfway campground, like all those, and a bunch more that head north towards the actual park. All of those are just amazing.
It's a really great area, yeah. But to learn more about which campsites at Camp 3 Campground we recommend booking and what else you should be packing to take with you, go to the link in the description to read the full blog article on our website.
Thanks for watching. We'll be back again with more fun camping stuff.
Yeah.